So, now we're talking about Under the Silver Lake, which showed up in theaters after like a year and a half of sort of like being lost out in the ether because of them showing it at a festival, and it got mixed reviews, and then
It's still getting mixed reviews.
it's still getting mixed reviews, and they were going to like do an award season with it even though, and then they stopped, and there was a rumor that it was going to get re-edited, but apparently that was a complete lie. And oh, we're doing a overview at the front, no spoilers, we'll let you know when we're going to talk spoilers. So this is by David Robert Mitchell,
Who did It Follows.
which we both liked. I feel like people have mentioned it a bunch, and they like talk about really liking it. I didn't like it that much, but it was clever and neat, and I enjoyed a decent bit of it. So, whatever. You saw this in theaters.
I saw it in theaters in Silver Lake, which was fun because you walked by a bunch of the, we walked by a bunch of the buildings that you then see that Andrew Garfield go by.
Well, it
added to the surreal feeling, I suppose.
I also love seeing LA actually play itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not that common that LA actually plays itself.
My all-time favorite was seeing Salt Lake City play LA.
Those
hills are in the wrong place. It was so upsetting. It was like, why are those hills there?
Well, and you also like it's all like what Atlanta and Georgia, or like these places where they get tax cuts.
Well,
in
yeah.
the Carolinas and stuff. And
Baywatch was also where it was like, that is not my beach.
Yeah, it's LA as LA.
Yeah.
But so it takes place in LA, and it's a little hard to do an overview discussion of this movie because it's weird, but ostensibly it is about Andrew Garfield's character, who is a stoner bum type who is late on his rent and is about to be evicted, and he meets this girl who he kind of has a flirtation with, and then, he doesn't, consummate the marriage, which he would have liked to, I guess, and also he just liked, I don't know, there was something more there, I don't know, whatever. And then he comes back later and she's gone.
Right.
And then we follow him trying to figure out what happened to her, and that is about as well as I can describe the movie.
Yeah.
without anything else.
So I checked, and Rotten Tomatoes wise, this movie's doing just 2% worse than Sunset.
55?
Yep. And I really liked it. The main complaints I'm seeing from people,
those horrid people,
is that they didn't understand it and couldn't follow it. I didn't really have any trouble with that.
I didn't have any trouble with that either, really.
Follow it.
Yeah.
And that its depiction of women is sexist.
I give that one slightly more credence. I'm not sure I agree, but I'm a white male, so who knows?
There's a lot of boobs.
There are a lot of boobs. There's also, as you point out to me, I will do it here. All she's done, whenever I brought that up, that how much female nudity in this movie, she's like, but Andrew Garfield's butt is on screen multiple times.
At least 3 times.
At least 3 times.
And
plus
there's one other male butt on screen.
Yeah, and some poop.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree that women are depicted more as objects.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of a genuine statement about Hollywood at the same time. I think there's a certain amount of victimhood of the women. They're not very empowered. There is one character but I think that's because any woman who's empowered is not going to spend any time near
Andrew Garfield's character.
And in fact, there is one who's kind of empowered, and she doesn't stick around for long. So.
Yeah, and I also, one of the things I felt sort of like we liked this movie, so this is the one bit of complaint we're having is, I felt like everybody is an object in this movie, even, female characters, but also the male characters, so I don't give that statement as much credence to other people as I might usually, but I don't disagree because the women are slightly more victims. There's also less diversity of character through the women.
Yes.
They're
I'm
very.
not saying the women are. They couldn't. Have
they're all very
better.
fey, and they're sort of running around, and they're sort of very sexual and blah blah blah. And some of that's sort of interesting, and in a way that isn't skeezy, and some of it might be a little skeezy. But the male characters, there's more diversity, but they're also really just stereotypes and objects too, except for like maybe one of them.
Yeah.
But that's a spoiler, so I'm not going to go there.
Right.
So, but the rest of it is really interesting.
I love a good wacky adventure. I love a good surreal adventure.
She's just taking a bath while you're doing this.
I know. She says we keep talking about lakes. She doesn't know what a lake is.
Sorry.
And I think it pays off really well, and I can't go into that for spoilers, but I think this is the kind of movie that could easily not pay off very well.
Yeah.
And I just like kind of, a mad trip. So
yeah.
I enjoyed it for that reason. I really liked it. I think it has a limited audience. I don't think...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you want to watch it and follow clues and stuff like that, I think you're going to be disappointed. I think if you're looking for a traditional narrative, you're going to get disappointed.
This is a movie for those of us, and I almost barely include myself in this because I tend to like standard narrative, but again, I've grown over the years, even just the last couple of years. This is really it's narrative. So it's not like an experimental film.
Right,
it's not like
right.
any. So it's narrative.
It's not the Green Fog.
Yes, it's not the Green Fog, which was good, but it's like non-standard narrative, but it's not like Pulp Fiction non-standard narrative, which still it's not like any of that. It is.
Your character goes on a journey and you follow him.
Yes, and it is even more contrived, and I don't say that in a negative way. I just mean what contrived literally means. People use it and it's like, oh, it's negative. No. It's really contrived even more than any story is already contrived. This one is even more contrived, but it felt purposeful, and so I liked how loopy and sort of all over the place it was going.
I like a good, take me somewhere different. Do something different. Do something strange.
Show me some of the seedy sides of life. Try to make a point and show things that are maybe a little... show some of the sexism of Hollywood and don't water it down necessarily.
Yeah.
Don't be skeezy about it.
I like an adventure, but I don't like to go hiking, so this is great.
Yeah.
Let's get into spoilers.
Spoilers.
Do you want to talk about the filmmaking a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So the filmmaking is really interesting. So this is kind of a spoiler, but at one point they end up in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and, Andrew Garfield shifts, and Hitchcock's tombstone is there, and I think all of they show a couple of tombstones in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and I'm pretty sure they're all just actually there.
Yeah.
And this film really owes a lot to Hitchcock. It's Hitchcock adjacent.
The Birds. It's a lot of driving and then fades with dramatic music, which makes me think of The Birds, but also Birdemic. But I'm totally okay with this. I think this movie should make you think both of The Birds and Birdemic, and that's fine.
And I've never seen Birdemic, and I'm probably fine with that. But yeah, well, and it was really neat, and it did a lot of really creative things. So much so that's my other negative thing to say about it, is that I wish it'd settled a little bit more. I could have done without the he gets, I don't know, he eats a cookie and it's LSD or something, who knows, it's a drug, and then they attach one of those body cams that follows you as you walk.
Yeah.
And it was that they only did it that one time, and they also did that thing where they make the image turn.
See, I enjoyed that more. I
enjoyed the shot, but it threw me out of the movie because it was I'm following the movie, and then they're doing this thing. Sometimes directors do really creative things, and it's look at me, I'm this great shot, and I'm stop doing that. I'm trying to watch the movie.
Yeah. And
this was another version of that, where it's look, the movie's just doing all these creative things to try and give you a feeling, and I'm stop it. I can't keep track of what you're doing. I just want to see what's happening.
See, I was seeing it more as just in his head, and often in his head, he's the cool guy in Hitchcock.
Right.
But then he's stoned on some drugs he didn't even realize he was taking.
Yeah.
And everything's just smeary and horrible.
Yeah.
So to me, it brought me into his mental state, and I wasn't as distracted. But I don't tend to be as distracted by the filmmaking. In fact, it's pretty bad. when I'm like, oh.
You notice it.
Yeah, it has to be pretty bad before I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought the filmmaking was really good through a lot of it. And even then, even when I was thrown out of it, it was really fun. It just, because it threw me out of it, I'm suddenly I'm watching a movie now and not into the characters. But, I mean, it's also to its credit that it would lose me and then immediately gain me back.
Yeah.
Because Andrew Garfield is just the stoner bum of everything, and I just loved his character. Like, he has sex in one of the upfront scenes with his girlfriend, the girl who has probably the most agency, or the woman who has the most agency.
And she gets the hell out of there.
She gets the hell out of there when she's not interested. And, like, they're having sex, and, like, he doesn't, orgasm until, like, he's watching the screen, the TV, and he watches a famous person on the screen, and that's when it happens, and it's like, I see what you're doing there, movie. I got it. I got you.
And, like, people who have trouble following it, I get it, but the whole point is that he's searching for meaning in all this pop, and all this pop culture, and all this things from his childhood, and he's noticed that Vanna White looks a certain way, and maybe this is all just, like, some thing, and then there's that moment where he runs into the songwriter, and I wish it tied in better to other stuff, but, like, the songwriter gives the whole thing of, like, no, I just made it, like, I made, like...
They pay me to make all these songs, and I've done all of them.
Right, and
we're all the same.
So the meaning that he thought it had, the meaning that he thought,
the Fender guitar from Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, like, he thought, like, he loved Kurt Cobain because...
He was a rebel.
Yeah, and, like, so that song has all the meaning tied to it, but now it's just made by some weird old guy on a piano, and it just, like, ruins him, and so watching him, like, follow these meaningsless clues that he's coming up with, like, I love that. Like,
well, yeah, and I like that it's at one point it's, like, saying, like, oh, no, there's an article that you showed me, and it said, like, it loves and hates the audience, and the audience for this movie is straight white males of, I don't know, the age of, like, 20 to 35 or something, which would include me.
Yeah.
But it's like, you follow all these clues, and it's great, you should totally do that, and it means something to follow all these clues, you'll get somewhere. Also, the songwriter is like, it doesn't mean anything, and finding and solving all these clues gets you nowhere. So it's like, it loves you and hates you.
But what I did like is, I read a book once that was almost like this, where someone was putting together clues, and it turned out they had mental illness at the end. And I'm like, that wasn't satisfying to me. Like, it's totally plausible, but not satisfying. And that's where I really like the payoff of this, is that there is this crazy thing going on, but he still doesn't get what he wants. Yeah. And so it was satisfying to the audience, but not the character, which I liked a lot.
Yeah, and that furthers my point. He gets something out of it, but it's not what he wants.
Yeah, and then I also feel like, the movie opens with Andrew Garfield looking like a derp and staring at these women at a coffee shop, and then the next thing that happens is a squirrel falls out of the tree and dies, and it's like...
That should set you up for what the movie's going to be.
Like, if you didn't like that, if that sounded bad to you, like, you're not going to like this movie.
Yeah. I think some people see that and they think it's just this weird thing.
Like, it's comedy, maybe.
Comedy, maybe.
It's not really a comedy.
But it's not comedy. I mean, there's comedic elements to the movie, but, like, that's supposed to set you up for, like, this is going to be a wacky, like, non-realistic movie. And I got that. And because of that, like, I think I got into it. But I can see other people seeing that. And, like, people wanting there to be something more. Like, it's all connected because Andrew Garfield's character wants it to all be connected, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I think other people, and that's the point, that's the only reason it's connected. And I think other people would want, like, it because this character does this, and that character does that, and this character does, this other thing, and that's why it's all connected.
Right.
But that's not this movie.
Yeah, and I don't know how you change that and not have it be a completely...
It would have to be a completely different movie.
I think it's kind of highlighted, people find Andrew Garfield's character unsympathetic and kind of what's going on, kind of dark.
Yeah.
But I think, they have the scene where they send the drone over to look at the sexy model, which is, again, like...
Yeah.
Depicting this kind of objectification of women, but then she just sits there and cries.
Yeah.
And it's just sad and awful.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, the movie's aware of that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, he is a loser and he's not a hero. So you can either look at it and say, like, I don't care about this guy and I don't want to watch it. Or, what I do is actually, like, sometimes I feel like a loser. So, like, this is
Yeah.
This is what it's like to be a loser sometimes.
Yeah, well, and, like, there's that whole debate of, like, well, do you show this in a movie or not? Because it's awful, but it's also true. And it's like, our main character is kind of a shitty guy. He's not irredeemable necessarily, but he's a shitty guy. I mean, he's spying on his neighbors who walks around with no clothes on, but she's also walking around with no clothes on. So he has binoculars, which, like, adds a level of, like, oh, he's that kind of guy. But also she's just walking around topless.
I don't think she minds.
Right. And so it's like
the lady getting spied on with the drone is more objectionable.
Yeah, and like I think even the movie is drawing, I mean, the point is those are our comparable moments, and it's like this one's okay because she doesn't mind. It's still weird that he uses binoculars, but it's fine. And then this other one, it's it looks skeezy in the movie, but that's the point.
Yeah,
it's skeezy and wrong, and you're supposed to feel
sad and awful.
I felt like uncomfortable watching that scene, and I was like, it was the kind of like, yes, I should be uncomfortable here. This feels right.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a lot. I mean, I am that person too. I want to keep watching the movie and reading into and letting my little pattern recognition brain.
Yeah.
Do exactly what Andrew Garfield's doing in the movie. I want to, I love the bits with the parrots where like, everybody's trying to figure out what the parrot's saying, and the point is, like, you may never know what the parrot's saying.
This
is the existential truth. You may never know what the
existential parrot.
Yeah, it's an existential parrot.
I also really like the Beware the Dog stuff. Like, that whole, like, that's the stuff that's, like, the red herring in the movie, to some degree, but it comes around to the end, and I didn't realize it until Kirby pointed it out, that, like, he's probably the dog killer, and I'm like, oh, yes, and he goes on a full arc, because at the end, it's all about how he was, like, he was empty because he wanted something he'd had, but he'd lost, and, like, your character, and it's good to see somebody, like, realize that they've sort of, they fucked themselves in their head because they're after something they couldn't get, and they're the dog killer. And
right.
So it's like, I dug that whole section and the metaphor that follows that whole section. Also, Callie Hernandez is in this, and she was also in La La Land and The Endless, and I liked it. I somehow made all three of those connect. I win.
And I guess, to contrast it with the other two movies we talked about.
Yeah.
This one has the most detail and the most plot and the most stuff, and I enjoyed that. It managed to be, I don't know that it's dreamlike, but it is kind of, and surreal.
It's surreal.
Despite having, a lot of dream reality is not being able to see or understand what's going on. Here I understood what was going on in every moment. It was just weird. Yeah. This
is the kind of movie where my last thought on it, since we're winding down here, it's going to be a cult movie.
Yeah.
In 10 or 15 years, I think another critic even made fun of this, but you're going to be able to say, like, I saw it in silver, like, in the theater, and that's going to be your cred you walk around with.
Yeah.
I get to walk around and say, I saw Primer in theater.
Yeah.
And I get credit for that. You get credit for having seen this movie in silver. Like, it's that kind of cult movie.
I also saw Primer in theater.
You also did that. You have one. You won over on me.
I saw our mom saw Ishtar and I think Hair in the theater, which like one of those had a infinitesimally small audience. But anyway.
But anyways, it's a cult movie, and if any of this has sounded like your thing, it really is what we said it is. It's interesting.
Two less of every 100 of you is gonna like it compared to Sunset. I mean.